QB Talk, the Nebraska defense, and our first guest of this young football season. That's next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, it's Friday morning. I am Mitch Sherman of The Athletic. Connor is still out. I am joined on this first Friday of August, day number 3 of Nebraska's training camp, by Kevin Sjuts. Kevin, the longtime sports director at 1011 News in Lincoln. Welcome in, and thanks for joining me.
Mitch, thank you so much for having me on. Crazy to hear you say it is August and it is day 3 of fall camp.
You believe it. It just starts going fast once it gets here. So exciting time around Nebraska sports. I want to get your thoughts on what's going on in Lincoln. We'll talk about Matt Rhule's camp, some storylines for this month. I want to get into volleyball in our third segment of this conversation. The preseason poll and preseason all-conference teams were released on Thursday. But this discussion cannot start without us talking about the quarterbacks at Nebraska. We are going to hear today on Friday in interviews from Glenn Thomas, the quarterbacks coach and co-offensive coordinator. We're going to hear from Donovan Raiola, the offensive line coach, his nephew Dylan Raiola, Heinrich Harburg, and Danny Kalin. So first, I guess, Kevin, any Patrick Mahomes sightings around Lincoln since camp opened?
Well, are Patrick Mahomes and Dylan Raiola, aren't they the same guy? You ever seen them together at the same time?
I have not. I've seen photos of them together at the same time.
Right. But I'm sure you were among the many, Mitch, that when you saw the photo that the University of Nebraska sent out when the team arrived at the dorms, had to do a second and third glance to make sure it was Dylan Raiola and not Patrick. Okay. I saw the similarities were pretty striking.
Well, I saw Taylor Raiola standing and walking behind Dylan with a big smile on her face. You know, part of me says that she knew what they were doing, and then I'm also not quite sure that they did seem to embrace it, and it worked out okay. There may have been a few moments of uncomfortableness on, what was it, Wednesday, when that thing was just going crazy on the internet. But, you know, then Patrick chimed in with a good-hearted, you know, he's my little cuzzo. So, you know, I guess all is fine. My first thought was not about Patrick Mahomes, but my daughter, who follows like every Taylor Swift fan account that's possible out there. That's where this thing started to go viral on Tuesday night, where the Taylor Swift fan accounts with like who these people who run these have no idea who Dylan Raiola is, and it was like Patrick ? Reposting the messages. So I don't know if you had any experiences like that in your home, but I did.
So you're telling me that Taylor Swift and the Swifties originated the comparison of Dylan Raiola and Patrick Mahomes?
I do think that's where it began, yes. And then Wednesday it just went everywhere. Yeah.
Wednesday,
the Swifties don't miss. The Swifties don't miss anything.
That is insanely true. But yeah, Nebraska put that picture out. What was it, about 6 o'clock, maybe 7 o'clock on Tuesday? And you're right, all the online traction it got was on Wednesday. We talked about it on the news at 10 o'clock Tuesday night. And I made that reference on our crosstalk after the fact. I said, if you guys didn't catch that, it was Dylan. It was not Patrick Mahomes, but the hair, I think the sunglasses are what really draw the comparisons. Yeah, the hair is the same, a little bit of a similar physique, but when you throw the bit, like, those aren't aviators, are they? I'm not trendy enough to know what kind of.
No, they're not. They're like the wraparounds almost with the big lenses in the
like
bridge over the top. Yeah,
something like that. They both wear them, so that's where I think I guess the pictures do have some striking resemblances.
Yeah, it was uncanny, and I don't think it was necessarily by accident. I'm sure the question will come up. The question has to come up for Dylan when he goes in front of the cameras on Friday. So will you ask it? Is someone in the room? I'll ask. Someone's got to ask Dylan about getting shouted out. At least getting shouted out by Patrick on social media.
Yeah. So the question isn't actually going to be about how the first 2 days of camp have gone. It's going to be about what was the biggest takeaway from the social media fanfare he got for being like Patrick Mahomes. Who's the money on? Who's going to ask the question? Aaron Sorensen's my first thought.
All right. I think Kendi's going to do it. He's as long as his phone's not playing Christmas music, he'll be the first to get it out. So, all right, we need to talk about some actual quarterback stuff. Any shot this month, Kevin, that it ends up, assuming Dylan Raiola is healthy, with a verdict different than him being named the starter sometime after, say, the 20th of August?
0% chance.
Okay.
And the asterisk would be barring injury.
Yeah. Well, that's everybody.
And I hate to even say that out loud, but assuming everybody is healthy, everybody remains in good standing on the team, I think there is a 0% chance it will be anybody other than Dylan Raiola. The better question is, when does the announcement come that he's Nebraska's starting quarterback?
So what do you? Well, I mean, I think it's probably 10 days before the first game. I think you need to give him some time to digest that. I mean, I think he's acting like the starting quarterback and has been since the spring. The backup doesn't generally take the offensive line out to dinner or fly the receivers to Texas for a weekend, but there is going to be this influx of additional attention. There'll be a new spray of national spotlight when that announcement comes. Nebraska names true freshman starter for week 1. The people who've been checked out on this story. Oh, I remember him. He was the 5-star who was committed to Ohio State and then Georgia. Now he's starting. Okay. They play Colorado in week 2. So there will be some additional attention, whether it's via social media or just traditional media, that I think you want to give him a few days to get accustomed to. I don't believe you want to send him out and say all right, we're going to let you know who the starter is when you guys get to the stadium. That I don't believe that's necessarily the healthiest way to do it. And there's not really any sense in keeping UTEP in the dark on this either. So I'm going with 10 days before the opener, which will be around August 21st.
I think that's a really good ballpark, Mitch, in terms of a timeline. They'll be out of the dorms because the dorms indicate camp. And I don't foresee them making any sort of announcement before exiting camp. I mean, that would kind of go against the grain of what the purpose of camp is, to create a competitive environment and to let these guys work through some mistakes and to have each other push each other. So I think that you're right. They'll get out of the dorms. They'll start to settle into, a normal routine. Classes coming up. I don't think that they will make that announcement, when class begins, because that's a whole new layer. This is an incoming freshman. He's now going to class and having some academic load to battle with as well. So I think that you're 10 days right on, because that's right before that begins for Dylan.
I also wonder how they're going to do it. It will be very understated, where Matt Rhule walks into the media room one day, answers a couple questions. Somebody says, "Hey, Coach, are you ready to announce a starting quarterback?" And he says, "Oh yeah, we're going to go with Dylan." Or will he preemptively strike? Will they put something on social media? Make a graphic, a video with Dylan walking out of the locker room doors. I don't think they want to do too much for this, because again, that goes against the entire MO of this offseason, which is don't put too much of a load on the freshman.
Completely accurate. I could also see them sneaking it into their little docu-series they have going on to try to drive people to watch that. I mean, because one thing we've learned with Matt Rhule and this staff is nothing is ever by accident. Everything seems to be premeditated. So as much as they're probably trying to drive views, because that docu-series paints the program in such a positive light. It's a very well-produced and polished product. It's a good watch. And even as a TV guy myself, I really enjoy it. I think it goes pretty fast. So I could see them maybe making the announcement somewhere in there to help the viewership of that go up, because there's a lot of benefit in having that docuseries get more people watching it and seeing what's on the Nebraska YouTube channel and all that. So I could see that being a possibility. I think if you don't have Nebraska's talented digital media team involved somehow, and it's just like an opening statement at a press conference, I would think that the digital team at the university would be like, hold on, we missed a moment there, because they're so good and they have so many resources to have a well-produced announcement of some sort, whether it's through a graphic or a video. Who knows? I just don't see it happening at a post-practice interview in Matt Rhule naming a starting quarterback there.
That would be understated. That will be entirely the call of the head coach. I mean, he may bring Coach Glenn Thomas into that discussion. How should we do this? They will have to at some point. Maybe they've already had the discussion about how they will do it, and that wouldn't shock me. And look, the digital media team will be ready to go if they're called upon in this situation. It's just a matter of whether Matt Rhule wants to make a big deal out of it. The thing is, it's going to be made a big deal in the media, whether he slips it into a press conference or Nebraska uses its own digital team to create something. So they might as well own the moment and just do it themselves. I think your idea of using the documentary series is a good idea. We may have the first poll in the history of the Locked On Nebraska podcast on Twitter and just put it out there today on Friday after the quarterbacks go in front of the media and say, should this be done through the YouTube channel? You know, should Matt Rhule announce it at a press conference? I don't know. I'll have to concoct that up and consult my podcast polling professionals on how that kind of thing is done.
So we've gone way past. I mean, we are 3 miles down the road as opposed to the poll question of who will be the starting quarterback. And now it's how will they announce Nebraska's starting quarterback? And then additionally, when will they make that announcement?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we covered it all. So, all right, that's the first segment of the Locked On Nebraska podcast for this Friday. We'll be back after the break to talk about Nebraska's defense and the Saturday night practice that the Huskers have scheduled at Memorial Stadium for a price. That's next. All right, Mitch Sherman here for eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts and prices that you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, welcome back on this Friday, segment number 2. Mitch Sherman here from The Athletic with Kevin Sjuts, sports director at Lincoln's 1011 News. Very happy to have Kevin as a guest as Connor remains out at the end of this week to have that big welcome addition to his family. Waiting to hear some news very soon from Connor about all that's going down. Can't wait to get the details. Kevin, I want to go this direction. I know every year brings a lot of anticipation. By the time we get to the end of the summer, we're so deep, I think, in our own heads about the direction that this football season is going to go, and like the mindset, at least in recent years where Nebraska's struggled, has come so far from the end of November, early December, that it seems like a different team entirely that's getting ready to take the field. And also by August, we generally have always talked ourselves into some reason why this year is going to be a make or break year for the Huskers. I mean, every year is important, of course. I wonder, in terms of the anticipation that you feel around Lincoln this week as camp's getting going. Now we're getting into August. I mean, it's serious time. The calendar says August. The first game says August. How does the excitement, the anticipation compare here in 2024 to what you've experienced in other years where that it's been at a high level?
I would say there's more excitement and there's more buzz about this season as opposed to last year, which is crazy to say out loud because last year there was a new head coach. And typically when somebody begins their tenure at Nebraska, there's an influx of buzz, excitement. There's just a vibe about Nebraska football. You think about when Scott Frost was hired, and even to an extent when Mike Riley was hired, when Bo Pelini was hired. There was, because it's just a blank slate and your mind can run wild. With Matt Rhule, I think that the fan base was so beaten down and became so pessimistic when Matt was hired that the first year there wasn't that. But after the way Nebraska showed some flashes last year, we're going to throw out November, and knowing how young the team was and how close the team was, and then what they did in the spring game. And oftentimes the spring season, I think a lot of fans, they consume it, but then you throw it out the window. And your evaluation of the upcoming year is kind of based on how the previous season ended. But I think this is not the case because of Dylan Raiola and some of the other new pieces that Nebraska had on the field in the spring. And you could feel a shift in confidence. And it wasn't a, oh man, we were so close, spoken in a negative tone. It was more, oh, we were so close. And you feel like a few of those guys that were brought onto campus in January, that they could be the difference between 4 losses down the stretch and I don't want to say 4 wins because I think that's extreme, but 2 or 3 wins down the stretch.
Yeah, it's funny. You brought up the Chasing 3 series that Nebraska does in the first segment of the show, and the latest episode has a segment on Isaac Gifford, who's one of the Huskers who came back after having a decision to make about should he test the NFL waters. And Isaac was asked at a moment in this video where they were out on the field after, I felt like the whole video this time they were running stadium steps, which was great video. It was better than what you'd think. If I say, well, they spent half the episode running the stadium, you think, oh, look, I'm gonna fast. But no, it was pretty entertaining. Isaac was asked by Corey Campbell to kind of give his why on what's your reason. Like you're taking a page a little bit from some coaches of the past. What's your why? I think we've heard John Cook say that. Nebraska volleyball. We'll talk Husker volleyball in the next segment. And Isaac told an anecdote about his brother, Luke, being a part of Scott Frost's first team and feeling like they came a long way. And then this group of guys left because their eligibility was up. And from there, they felt like there was a dip. And there was a dip from 2019 right on down through the end of the Frost era. Now, was it because these players left? It was a complicated situation. But so Isaac faced with a choice of, hey, I'm a senior, I can go, or I've got a year left because that 2020 season didn't count. He chose to come back specifically for that reason because there was unfinished business. So I think you're right when you talk about how there's this anticipation, and there are certainly players within this core group who are very much remembering how close it was last year, and they don't want to leave before it gets up across the finish line.
And I also feel the youth element is a big factor in Nebraska's outlook for this season. I mean, Mitch, you're a Royals fan, right? And look at what they're doing right now with Bobby Witt Jr. So you're not, that one player can in your brain completely change the way that you look at an upcoming season. And I think Nebraska has that in a way with Dylan Raiola. So, but that's not the full picture, but the fact that Cam Lenhart had the season heated last year, and the fact that Jalen Lloyd had a couple of big time plays in the season. They were just scratching the surface last year. So in the context of the Royals, when you have a Bobby Witt that first year does some nice things, you start thinking about, well, what could happen in year 2 and then year 3? So it's not just the feeling of what this fall could possibly be. It could be, you might have a feeling about 2027 and 2028 right now. And I think that is really what is behind all the momentum that's pushing this fan base into this space of excitement for this upcoming season and beyond.
I don't know if you watched that the latest episode, but there was a point in there where Matt Rhule said, and he was in front of the team and he was talking to them, and he said that he's going to coach at Nebraska for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And I thought, whoa, 5, man, you're already on year 2. Yeah. Making plans to wrap this thing up fairly quick. I guess that means he expects to be in the national championship picture by 2028 or 2029. I know he doesn't want to leave here before getting Nebraska to the mountaintop, so to speak. That doesn't necessarily mean winning a national championship, but he wants them in a secure place. And I don't think it's going to be 5 years. I think it'll be closer to 10, assuming that he has that option to be able to leave on his own choice. He said, and I believe him, that he wants this to be his last job. But anyway, I went down a different path there. What do you think Saturday night? What's this going to be like? First time ever in the stadium, a practice that is open to the public. Fans can come pay their $25, contribute to Nebraska's NIL efforts. The players' parents are paying $25. Julie Rhule is going to be there paying her $25. What are you expecting to see? What's your anticipation for this event?
I hate to put the blanket on the fire here, Mitch, but what are people doing on August 3rd? I'm not going to say much about Nebraska football. The question that I pose is, what are you doing on August 3rd? A lot of people are vacationing. They're back to school shopping. They are trying to get in those final weekends and meeting up with friends that you delayed doing in May, June, and July. So I think just based on the timing of it, it might not be as big of a spectacle as some people maybe imagine. In terms of a number of how many people will be there, I had a friend of mine say that he thought 8,000 people would be there, and I told him he's absolutely crazy. And maybe Husker Nation will surprise me and prove me wrong. I think that's a way too lofty number. And I think it's not about Nebraska football in my mind. It's more about people trying to maximize one of the final weekends before kids go back to school. But then again, it is an opportunity to watch Nebraska practice. And there haven't been many of those. I can't even recall, outside of the Boneyard Bash, any real opportunities for fans to go watch a practice. And I do believe it will be a practice. The folks that are going should not expect to show up and we have red squad, white squad, and they're going to go scrimmage for an hour and a half. No, they will be doing individual drills. There will be drills that are stopped because there will be coaching moments. And I don't think that Matt Rhule and his coaching staff will adapt what they want to do on the 4th day of camp just because there are X thousand number of fans in the stands. They have work to do, so they will get that work done. Will it be fun? I'm sure it will. Concessions are going to be open, so they're going to try to make it, more than just come, find your seat, watch some football, go home. And I wouldn't be surprised if the players stick around and they sign some autographs, and they're going to want to make sure the people that pay their $25 get something in return, a little bit beyond just watching them do a few drills.
Matt Rhule does like to remind people that he's the son of a pastor. I wonder if the collection plates are going to be going through the stands to further enhance the 1890 efforts. If they get less than 8,000 people, they may have to do that just to make the event worthwhile. I could see 10,000 people being there. I just could. I know a lot of people are, they're at the lake, they're on vacation, whatever. If it's not, I think it's supposed to be in the 90s, maybe or low 90s on Saturday. So by 6:30, it's going to be bearable. Well, let's hope it's not like Wednesday night at 6:30, because if that's the case, the whole thing is going to be canceled. We will not have the 90-mile-an-hour winds going through Memorial Stadium. If that happens, you can just consider that a bad omen on the 2024 football season. All right,
that's the end of Mitch. But they still got their money though. They're still getting their $25, right? Do they refund that thing out?
No. You're not getting refunds no matter what. This is a fundraising effort entirely. If they have to cancel the practice because of the weather, you just made a $25 donation to the Nebraska Collective. Yeah. All right. That's the end of segment number 2. We're going to come back after this break and talk about John Cook's volleyball team. But first, if you're watching TV all day and have to turn down the volume with all that shouting, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the can't-miss analysis on all the biggest stories without the screaming. Locked On Sports Today delivers analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Mitch Sherman here for FanDuel. Generally, this is Connor's time to shine. He's the guy who likes to talk about FanDuel, but I'm going to step in here since Connor is away and let you know that I love sports, just like Connor does. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. Even when the sports aren't sporting like we want, FanDuel lets us keep them going. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. We've been talking about the Royals. We try to talk about the Royals. Hey, go bet on Bobby Witt Jr. to win the MVP. He's rising up in the ranks, and my guess, pretty soon it's going to be even money or even a worse bet. You can get it now. He hit another home run on Thursday night. Go bet on Bobby. Bet on the Royals. Don't take my advice. Figure it out for yourself. I'm not responsible for anything that may happen if you do that. Anyway, right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money line, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Okay, final segment of this Friday show, final segment of the week. Connor is expected to rejoin us on Monday. In his place today, Kevin Sjuts, 1011 sports director in Lincoln, has graciously joined me for this show. All right, Kevin, I saved this for the end. Both of us have a long history of covering Nebraska volleyball and deep connections to the program. Dare I say, perhaps deeper connections to the Nebraska volleyball program than any members of the media in the state of Nebraska, not named Lauren Cook and John Baylor. I don't know how much college volleyball we're going to talk here on the Locked On Nebraska pod. It might be a fair amount if it's a season like last year. And you're the perfect person to get into it with me. So on Thursday, John Cook's team was picked to win the 18-team Big Ten over Wisconsin. On the preseason All Big Ten team, the Huskers placed Setterberg and Riley, libero Lexi Rodriguez, opposite hitter Merritt Beeson, outside hitter Harper Murray, outside hitter Taylor Landfair, the Minnesota transfer. I don't know what happened with Rebecca Alec and Andy Jackson, the middle blockers, but they were clearly snubbed. And really, I'm not so sure that DS Laney Choboy wasn't also snubbed. So anything short of a national championship is a disappointment for this group in the senior year for the two captains, Beeson and Rodriguez. Is that your read, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, I'm going to agree with you for the sake of agreeing with you, Mitch. What I mean,
you can disagree. You can disagree.
Well, it's just so hard to win it, but they have a wealth of riches on this team. And I think any other coach in college volleyball would gladly take Nebraska's roster. Let's just say that. Nebraska's now, John Cook's challenge is to try to get all those pieces to work together. Not everybody can play, and everybody has to get along. And there are going to be some players who don't play as much as they have in previous years. And you have to find a way to get Taylor Landfair on the court. You have to find a way to get Becca Alec on the court. You have to find a way. I mean, from what I've heard, their incoming middle blocker from San Diego, she's outstanding. They love her. She's like Beeson 2.0, but at a different position. She's got to get – I don't know how John does this. And this is why I believe Coach Cook doesn't sleep. It's because he stays up all night trying to figure out rotations. And if he's not figuring out the lineups, he's probably mapping out his correspondence and how to talk and communicate to these girls and say, listen, we're going to do this in this game, and this is why I'm doing it. Because you can't just make a roster choice with a group of young ladies this talented. You have to make the roster choice, share it with the team, and then individually tell them one by one, we're going to have you starting out. You're going to rotate in on rotation 4. And somehow they have to agree that that's going to help them win volleyball matches. But to your question, winning a national championship, I'm not going to say this season's championship or bust because it is so hard to do. But if they made it to the national finals last year and they have every starter returning, they should probably be playing in the final match of the season in Louisville this December.
You would think. I mean, Texas is out there, so this is not a layup. There is nothing easy. Texas handled Nebraska at the end last year, and the Longhorns work to get better in the offseason too. You can bet. Without knowing all the moves that Texas made, I'm certain that they have Nebraska in mind when they go about putting together their roster for the next season. So, all right. You mentioned Layla Blackwell, the transfer
Thank you.
from
That was
San
she
Diego
was
State.
escaping me.
And I wasn't even thinking about that situation where you have Blackwell coming in as a high-profile transfer, and then Alec and Jackson, who are back as legitimate stars already in the middle. What I was thinking of, and I want to end this conversation with this, it's getting way down in the weeds, so we're serving the volleyball fans out there in a big way. I mentioned Murray and Landfair, the two outside hitters, both highly decorated. Taylor Landfair is a former Big Ten Player of the Year. Harper Murray, Big Ten Freshman of the Year last year. I think people believe she's a future All-American, perhaps a future Olympian. Nebraska added Sky Pierce, one of the top freshmen nationally out of Kansas City, who was a standout in the spring when Landfair had not yet arrived and Murray was out. And Nebraska also has Lindsey Krause coming back, a former top recruit who went through so much last year, an awful season personally. She was involved in a car accident that was not her fault and then suffered a season-ending ankle injury. So you're talking about a highly motivated player who plays at an All-American level herself when she's healthy. So Krause, Pierce, Murray, Landfair, how does John Cook find the space on the court to start two of those players?
I really don't know. I mean, typically, if you would have that many outsides that you want on the court, you run a 6-2. You're not running a 6-2 with Bergen Riley. So that's what makes this so fascinating with what he does. And maybe he goes hot hand. Maybe it's like a baseball manager that just kind of rolls the lineup and sometimes moves the different power hitters. Some games you're a 3-hole hitter, some games you're the 6-hole, depending upon what you've done in your last 5 to 7 at bats. So maybe John Cook's going to go off of hitting percentages, and who knows, maybe he goes off of what's on the opposite side of the net and the way different teams play. Are they strong blocking? Are they better on the back end with their floor defense? And who can terminate better? Who goes off of hands better? So not to get too volleyball speak, but I think there's a lot of nuances and intricacies of how you have to manage a team from a roster standpoint with this. If you're asking me who's going to play, I mean, Merritt Beeson, that's a no-brainer. She's going to play. I think Harper Murray is one that she's going to have to earn her spot because they have other weapons, Taylor Landfair, that could unseat the Big Ten Freshman of the Year from her starting position at Nebraska.
I think they'll both play, and Krause and Pierce are going to have to earn their minutes and find their ways into matches that maybe Nebraska isn't challenged as much as it would otherwise be. I think what they won't do is redshirt Pierce in the way they did with Caroline Juravicius last year, because we saw what happened there. High profile, highly rated recruits come in. If they don't play, even if there's a future for them in the program, there's no guarantee they're going to stick around. In fact, the only guarantee is they're going to look around. So I guess you play your pieces. I don't know how this is going to work for John Cook when he's got 18 scholarships instead of 12 a year from now. I'm guessing he's not going to use them all, but that's probably a different topic for a different day. So, all right. I want to thank Kevin Sjuts for joining me today on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Had a great conversation about the quarterbacks, about other things that are happening in the Nebraska volleyball and the Nebraska football program. And then was awesome to talk some Nebraska volleyball here at the end. To finish this thing, one final note that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts like us, plus national shows that cover every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app.